Good morning, everybody. You're watching our mid-morning edition of Arirang News on this Monday, June 8th, coming to you live from Seoul. I'm Shin Se-min. And before we get started, here are the stories we're following at this hour. Samsung heir Lee Jae-yong is set for his arrest warrant hearing over alleged irregularities made to cement his grip on power. The fate of the world's largest computer chip and smartphone maker is now in limbo. The verdict due later today or early tomorrow. South Korea's largest indoor amusement park, Lotte World, is forced to shut after a student with COVID-19 visited the theme park. Newly added cases have now topped 50 a day for 2 straight days, and all elementary through high school students are now back in class. Plus, U.S. President Donald Trump orders the National Guard to start withdrawing from Washington, D.C. after protests over the death of African-American George Floyd turned much more peaceful. Our top story this morning, the high-profile legal showdown that sees the head of the country's largest conglomerate, Samsung Electronics, and South Korea's prosecution face-off. It's about to get underway. Now, for more, we connect live to our Kim Bo-kyung for the details. So, Bo-kyung, another tense day for one of South Korea's wealthiest men as he's due in court any minute. Has he showed up yet?
Not yet, Semin. The Seoul Central District Court will decide today whether the de facto head of Samsung Group, Lee Jae-yong, should be arrested over his alleged involvement in corporate fraud dating back to 2015. He hasn't appeared yet as the court hearing is slated at 10:30 a.m. Korea time. As you would expect, crowds of reporters are waiting to see if he makes a statement or answers questions before he is ushered inside. He will be joined by 2 Samsung executives, Jeju-do and Kim Jongun, who are from the group's now deactivated control tower, the Future Strategy Office.
Now, Bo-kyung, lay out some of the charges leveled against Lee, and Samsung Group also gave out a statement just a day before the court's hearing this morning.
Yes, Semin. The billionaire Samsung Group heir is facing 2 main charges. The first over the controversial 2015 merger between 2 Samsung affiliates, Samsung C&T and Jeju Industries. He is accused of intentionally manipulating their stock prices, lowering the value of Samsung C&T's shares, and inflating those of Jeju Industries to make sure the merger went through without a hitch. He is also accused of inflating the value of the pharmaceutical company Samsung Biologics by committing accounting fraud. Both of the alleged moves are seen as his bid to further cement his power over the group and facilitate a clean succession from his ailing father, Lee Gon-hee. Samsung Group is in shock right now as the prosecution's move came right after he requested an external committee to decide whether such an investigation was even required. The group issued a statement on Sunday rebutting some of the points prosecutors made and asked the court to pave the way for the company, which is South Korea's biggest, to normalize its management structure amid these unprecedented times with COVID-19 outbreak and the trade war between China and the U.S. Back to you, Semin.
All right, Kim Bo-kyung with those updates. Thank you. South Korean prosecutors will announce on this Monday the results of an investigation into Sillajen, once one of the country's most prominent biopharmaceutical companies, over suspicion of violating the Local Capital Market Act and dereliction of duty. Seoul's Southern District Prosecutor's Office will be holding a presser in the afternoon at 3 p.m. Korea time, and the head of the biotech firm, Moon Eun-sang, was previously detained last month for alleged involvement in insider trading. He allegedly sold a huge chunk of company stock right before the price plunged over the news that the third phase of trials for an anti-cancer drug had been suspended. Now, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un presided over some of the regime's Politburo meeting on Sunday local time, according to its official news agency this morning, the Korean Central News Agency. We still don't have the full details, but report says the meeting generally focused on improving the regime's chemical industry as well as improving the livelihoods of its citizens in the capital of Pyongyang. Now, there was no mention of the recent threat from North on the anti-regime leaflets that demanded defectors to stop sending leaflets across a demilitarized zone separating the 2 Koreas, or it would scrap a recently the bilateral military agreement. It's the first in many weeks that Kim Jong-un has made a public appearance. Now, COVID-19 cluster infections continue to spread in the Seoul metropolitan region, and a famous amusement park in the capital was also forced to shut over the weekend after a visitor tested positive for the virus. Our Kim Hyo-san with the details.
After shutting down abruptly on Sunday, Lotte World, an amusement park located in southeastern Seoul, wrote on its homepage that the move came as a visitor tested positive for COVID-19. It was a high school senior student living in Seoul who visited the park from noon to 9 p.m. on June 5th, along with 3 friends. Although the student did not have symptoms, she got tested after hearing a visitor to the Lotte World Mall late last month had tested positive. After the student tested positive, the Seoul Metropolitan Office of Education and quarantine authorities immediately closed her school in the Jungnam-gu district, switching back to online classes until Wednesday. They're also mandating some 150 students, teachers, and contacts get tested immediately, while nearly 600 students and faculty members will also be tested. Lotte World is also on alert. It shut down at around 1 p.m. Sunday and says it will reopen on Wednesday after a thorough disinfection. Quarantine authorities are exerting their full efforts to trace the visitors and people who came into close contact with the infected student. As on June 5th alone, it's estimated that around 690 people visited the amusement park. Despite the fact that the government has put in place enhanced quarantine in the metropolitan area following sporadic cluster infections, the virus continues to spread, especially in churches, a door-to-door sales company, and an indoor table tennis club. Kim Hyo-san, Arirang News.
Amid all that, this Monday is the 4th and final phase of school reopening for students here in South Korea. It brings back into classrooms more than 1.3 million students in middle school first grade, as well as those in the 5th and 6th grades of elementary schools. As a result of COVID-19, they are going back to school 99 days later than originally planned. With this, all of South Korea's nearly 6 million students will be in class instead of studying online at home. But most of them will only go on designated days, with classrooms running at only 2/3 or even 1/3 of their full capacity to minimize a risk of infection. U.S. President Donald Trump ordered National Guard troops to withdraw from Washington, D.C. on Sunday morning local time, saying, quote, everything is under perfect control after a week and a half of protests. Now, the move comes as D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser formally requested last Thursday that President Trump remove the National Guard troops and other military personnel from the city. Around 5,000 National Guard troops and airmen from 11 states have supported the D.C. National Guard in response to the ongoing demonstrations. Washington, D.C. saw its largest number of protesters on Saturday, with no arrests made for the 3rd consecutive days. Protests that started in the United States crossed the Atlantic to Europe over the weekend, with people assembling in major cities, chanting against racism and demanding justice for George Floyd. Thousands of citizens took to streets in front of U.S. embassies in cities like Berlin, London, and Copenhagen, echoing chants of "I can't breathe," and they knelt in silence for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, the amount of time the police officer knelt on George Floyd's neck before he died. Most of the protests were peaceful, but there were some clashes. 14 police officers were hurt in London, and 93 protesters were arrested in Berlin on Saturday for throwing stones and bottles. In other news, Jeju, the popular resort island off the southern coast of Korea, boasts a perfect harmony of nature and tourist attractions, attracting hundreds of thousands of visitors from home and abroad. But at this time of COVID-19, tourists are seeing what traveling in the post-virus world is like. Our Lee Jae-yong files us this report.
As soon as you step out of Jeju International Airport, you're greeted by one of the island's iconic stone statues known as Harebangs, but these days it's wearing a face mask. Across the island, this has made them even more popular as photo spots, and they serve as a constant reminder to tourists to keep their masks on.
Tourists really love Jeju, so they need to protect it. We started the campaign at the airport, but now other private facilities have followed suit voluntarily.
Social distancing is a part of traveling now, so new kinds of activities are trending at hotels. Smart staycation is one of them, like at this hotel, where guests stay in their rooms and use smart TVs to play content from their smartphones.
Due to COVID-19, we try to help our customers stay safe and have fun during their trip here. So we will install smart TVs in each room.
The hotel also offers a private rental car service so that customers can limit their contact with others when they want to go outside. With tourism going non-contact, forest has emerged as a new hotspot. And Jeju has officially designated this ecotourism as a new pillar of the industry. Here, instructors used to take visitors around in groups, but those group tours have been canceled, and now visitors make their own journey based on these recommendations. To help people clear their minds and relax, the Forest Service recommends simply walking through the forest, gazing at the sky, recording birdsong, and even trying to capture these scenes on paper. Immersing oneself in nature, experts say, helps people overcome the corona blues.
I can be more mindful and free. I can go back to spots I went to before, or stay in one spot for a long time.
In fact, on Jeju Island, you can take yourself on a private, non-contact tour just about anywhere. All you need to do is drive along any road by the ocean or through the woods. Lee Kyung-un, Arirang News, Jeju.
Good morning. It's going to feel more like mid-August across much of the country with heat wave alerts in place for Daegu and parts of Gyeongsang-pukdo and Chungcheong-pukdo provinces. Looking in a bit more detail, Gwangju and Daejeon will reach 33 degrees Celsius this afternoon, and Gyeongju should hit 34 degrees under the scorching sun. So UV rays will reach very high levels across much of the country. Don't forget your sunblock or other protection from the sun. And ozone levels will be at unhealthy levels across the whole country except for Jeju Island. And it's going to get hotter. Seoul will also see the highest temperatures of the season tomorrow at 33 degrees Celsius, with seasonal temperatures to persist throughout the week. Also starting Wednesday, Jeju and certain parts of the country will see a frequent rain. Well, the weather agency is saying it could be the start of the monsoon season for Jeju, but not quite yet for the southern parts of the country. That's Korea for you, and here's the international weather for news around the world.
And that's our time at this hour on Arirang News. But more news lineup coming up in our later newscast at noon Korea time, so stay close. As always, thank you for watching.